I had just finished my master's in finance. In my head, I was like, I've got this master's. I'm just going to apply to these. Never even thought about like what culture I was walking into, what kind of job I was walking into. And then just, like throwing applications the traditional way. And I was getting nothing back, like absolutely nothing. I've realized in hindsight, it's just the product is me, not some other product that I'm selling. Yeah, I guess in a way, it all kind of worked out where I made a sales funnel where I was the product.
What was the key difference maker for you? Because it was a lot of half KM applying, nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm getting interviews, I'm getting offers. Oh, there's this whole new world of things. What was the main?
In sales and in hiring, people buy from people, people hire people. Like if you are just a CV, it's so much harder to kind of impart like who you actually are to the person that you're trying to get hired by. Right?
Yeah. Ashish, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. It's an interesting story with you because we worked together 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? I think it was straight out of uni, wasn't it? I was very, very fresh to the job world then.
Yeah. 2022, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's
like a blur. How quickly it happened.
It was so long ago, and I do actually get people talking about, because obviously I've been on your LinkedIn. And I get people asking, and I always think like, oh my god, it was just like a year ago, and oh my god, it was so long ago.
All these years ago, I get the same thing. Like in terms of, I'm thinking back, Ashish, I worked with him like 6 months ago, and I realized it's 2024.
Yeah,
and it was 2022. I mean, we had an interesting story, obviously, because this was kind of like post-pandemic, post-COVID, markets recovering. You were looking for a job. You were having a little bit of a, an interesting time. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
With your job search, how did that go? Talk us through all of that.
Yeah, so I guess thinking back, I had just finished my master's in finance. And like in my head, I was like, I've got this master's, I'm just going to apply to these.
Where's my investment banking job?
Yeah, where's
right now?
Yeah. Just going to get an answer. Like no even thought about like what culture I was walking into, what kind of job I was walking into. And then just, like throwing applications the traditional way. And I was getting nothing back, like absolutely nothing. So I got into, I kind of looked through your stuff, and it made a lot of sense, and I think a lot of it resonated with me, because I'd kind of been just throwing this all into, it felt like the abyss, and just getting nothing back. And obviously I was quite a few months into my job hunt after my master's, so I was like, I need something to land. Let's just try this thing, and then I guess what happened after was just.
It was a very interesting story, definitely, because it was kind of like we're looking for one job, which is financial analyst.
Yeah.
And then halfway through, we were like, oh, let's look for something completely different. Because the market's tough for financial analysts, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But also through the process of you understanding the culture fits and the soft skills and the work styles and all that stuff, you realized, I don't actually want to do this. I want to do something completely different.
Yeah, and I think that was it. Is like once we had those kind of deeper discussions about like what I actually want from my company culture, from my career, it just made sense to do an SDR job. I think also the thing that I've realized in hindsight is a lot of what we were doing when we were job hunting in your way was SDRing in itself. Like it's just the product is me, not some other product that I'm selling. So I guess in a way it all kind of worked out where I made a sales funnel where I was the product. It works out in that SDR managers love that, by the way.
Cause selling to salespeople is super easy. And especially where you're like, okay, I can do the job judging by how I'm getting your attention to want to do the job. People are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You can do the job because you're showing me these skills already.
Best proof of concept, like I can do that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Was that the switch, you think?
I think it was. It just made a lot of sense, and it kind of felt right in that moment. And I've actually noticed this with a lot of my colleagues now and in the past. Is like sales is just something that no one actually aims for, but it kind of just chooses you and you go with it. And like all the people who I work with have like super diverse backgrounds, and like so many different stories of how they ended up in sales. But it's one of those jobs that like once you actually understand what it is, because obviously I had some preconceptions on what SDRing was, and I was wrong, and we kind of like spoke through that. Once I kind of understood what the job was, it made a lot of sense to just go for
perfect. And in terms of like the job search before, obviously everything worked out. What was the key difference maker for you? Because it was a lot of tough, like, hey, I'm applying, nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm getting interviews, I'm getting meetings, things are moving.
Yeah.
I'm getting offers. Oh, there's this whole new world of things. What was the main difference
networking
maker?
for
Networking.
sure. Yeah, I think like in sales and in hiring and everything, people buy from people, people hire people. Like if you are just a CV, it's so much harder to kind of impart like who you actually are to the person that you're trying to get hired by, right?
Yeah.
Versus like if you're coming in, you know, as someone who has like taken the initiative, spoken to them, demonstrated skills, it makes so much more sense for them to hire you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a no-brainer. But it's also something I just didn't have any idea how to do back then.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of soft skills, communication skills that we kind of worked on.
Yeah.
That just it made it so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people kind of, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I just wanted to touch upon that before networking, what did it look like for you whilst and before, you know, working on those things, and how much time did you actually spend looking for a job where you were not very happy with the results that led you to have the job?
Okay, let's think back. So I think I'd kind of finished my master's around October-ish. So that I'd been looking like all of October, November, December. Like I got through like some initial screenings, and then interviews just didn't really come from them. So I was just like, something needs to change, right? Yeah. And then like kind of post working with Milo, I think that after like a month, things just started rolling in. I got loads of interviews and stuff.
When did you start initially seeing the results? Like for me, like it was like at the end of week 1. I was like, yeah. Okay,
I think it was a couple weeks in, because we started kind of around Christmas time.
Yeah.
Which
the worst time.
Yeah,
tricky time.
Like,
I was gonna say tricky.
Yeah, exactly.
Traditionally is like horrendous because you know, everyone's on holiday.
Yeah.
But I think kind of as you would expect, when people were like coming back into the office around like January time, it just started like rolling in. Yeah, and then after that, it was kind of like a whole different scenario where it was like I had to choose which job I wanted versus like them choosing to interview me, I guess.
Yeah. But you had more power in your job search this time because you kind of changed a few things. You like you realized that you've got all these things at your disposal. Like I have soft skills, I have hard skills, I have culture fits, I have work style, measurable metrics. It's like these are my playing cards, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start realizing which companies will want to hire you and speak to you. And then you realize it's not just apply and wait. Because a lot of people watching this podcast right now, they're probably thinking, hey, I'm applying, 6 months goes by, maybe one interview, and it's pretty bleak, right?
Yeah,
We've all been there.
Confidence destroying, that is.
Of course, yeah.
And even if you don't get a job, but you get 3 interviews a week, that is so confidence building. And it just helps you. It's like, okay, I didn't make it this one. Next one I get, I'll nail it. Yeah. And I definitely see as, one door closing, 10 different ones opening up. But it's so difficult to see that in the way when you don't get any interviews at all.
Yeah, and for sure, it can also feel quite personal.
Yeah.
You know, when you're like, you're kind of putting your neck on the line and like nothing's coming back.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a fundamental sales skill as well, as facing rejection. And also like you said, seeing positives in those kind of like smaller good moments.
It's all about those moments, man, because like once you're getting those rejections, that self-depreciation, when it kicks in, it kicks in hard. And whether it's for a job seeker or whether it's for a salesperson like yourself, it's about knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. And whilst I come to that, I would love to know more about the company you work in and what's your role and how the day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, so kind of 2 companies on from Impact now. I work at a company called Moss. Basically, we work in the fintech space. So we We sell an accounting system for like businesses to automate how they manage expenses, AP, invoicing. Basically, it's quite a technical product to sell because you're selling to accountants and financial controllers who.
I wish you would sell it to me, man. I'm done with my Amexes and
Oh,
taking photos of my receipts. And one of my expense got bounced, and then because like it was so far back that is like we need you to do it again.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm so because I don't know why I have this habit of whenever I'm going out with a client, any receipt, any expense I make, I take a photo of the receipt before I throw it out.
Of course,
I just know, I don't know, for some reason, and I put it in a file in my computer with the date and the name of the client I went out with. So I just had that backup and I just uploaded just in case. Because
if you work for Meta and you bought toothpaste, Mark Zuckerberg
I just read that yesterday.
Yeah,
I just read that yesterday.
Yeah,
that is so interesting.
Crazy.
So
it's kind of just to solve that problem. Like on the employee side, like as soon as you would spend off of one of our cards, not on Amex. And then you'd instantly get a notification on your phone, and you take the picture, and then it's like all the post accounting's done for the finance team. So it's there to kind of remove that whole pain.
That's a dream.
So it solves a real problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And I think that's super important, especially like if someone watching is a prospective salesperson, right? You got to sell a product that solves a pain.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, like, you can be the best salesman in the world. It'll suck.
And you also have to solve the pain of the company to get the job. So you're the product and you're the solution to the company wanting to hire you. Which kind of brings me to the next question is like, what advice would you give right now to someone watching this who wants to be in your position, who wants to get the job that you have at the moment? What would be the first thing they do today?
I think you have to kind of demonstrate like quite a few key competencies. Like in my opinion, what makes a good SDR, there's a couple things. So curiosity is really key. Like if you're speaking to a person, you need to understand what their pain is, because it's not going to be the same for everyone, right? And like just in the way that you would sell a product, if you're selling yourself to someone, you've got to understand that you fit their pain. Because if you're trying to say like, I'm fixing something for you, and they don't even have that problem, it's like it's not a match, right? Which is why curiosity is so important. Like take the time to understand what the person is asking of you. Resilience, like just as a job hunter would feel, an SDR feels 100 rejections right in a week. And it's so important to detach yourself from rejection and demonstrate that you can just bounce back from a no. Because like if in my day-to-day, right, I'm calling like 50 people, right, and most of them will say no to me because it's the wrong time, they don't have the budget, there can be so many objections, but like I can't let that ruin my flow. So
taking it professionally, not personally.
Exactly.
And just keeping about at your job. In my first episode, I called it eating no's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. There's this guy called Ben Dennehy on LinkedIn. Amazing salesperson. But he makes it a game where, if you can get 29 no's in a row, you win the game. And then, it's actually, and then you put them all on a checkered piece of paper. And you have to cross them out, and then if you get a yes, you have to start over again.
That's a really
so
good
you gamify it the other way around.
That's awesome. Yeah. But in terms of reverse engineering that for job seekers today, so let's say a job seeker right now wanted to show an employer that they have that resilience, understanding that the game of sales, you're going to get a lot of no's, and an employer would really like you to be thick-skinned, to know how to objection handle, or to learn or show them that you can learn how to objection handle pretty quickly, and that you're not going to take things personally. Would you say that's a really big part of what you do and how someone should sell themselves? Or
I think all of these questions for any good sales interview would probably come up. So it's something you got to be ready for. I think the other thing is just a confidence and ability to kind of just throw yourself into whatever you're doing. And if you're a job hunter, just pick up the phone, start calling people, email people, LinkedIn message people. It's it's so overwhelming at the start because you're like, oh man, am I going to annoy this person? Like, am I going to get on the
Even before
nerves?
doing that, you start, sort of self-depreciating
Yeah.
yourself. It's like, I don't want to do that. Am I is the messaging right? And I don't know about that.
And you get into like this analysis paralysis, right?
100%.
Analysis paralysis. I love that.
Which is like you're reading the job adverts, you're getting all these, unfortunately, you haven't been successful.
Yeah.
Or like you're reaching out to people and they don't respond and you think, oh, is this going to work? And then you just start reading job specs in detail.
Yeah.
And you should just do it.
Yeah, you just go.
Yeah,
like,
that's it. Which is the role itself of SDR. What would be the advice that you give, let's say, well, not the advice. What would be one thing that you wish you knew better when you were job hunting before? Just networking is one thing, which 100% people need to do. But when you started networking, what was that one click that kind of got you all the meetings?
That's interesting. Okay, so my advice now would be different to 2 years ago because I didn't know how to cold call then, and I think it's an absolute weapon to be able to cold call in this environment. The reason being is like back when we were job hunting, AI wasn't really as taken off as it was. So it was a lot easier to land emails in an inbox and like cold email people. So like if you'd asked me back then, I would have said learning how to cold email and demonstrating like value and like pain selling in those emails, because that's what we were doing, right? It was that I think you called it a VVP or something.
Value validation project.
Yeah, I remember writing mine. And it really landed with the sales manager who I first started with. But now in kind of this environment, especially in sales, like we just win on the phone. So understanding how to structure a cold call, how to unpack someone's pains over the phone, I think it's the ultimate way to kind of build rapport up front. And it's really important to just be upfront and honest as you're cold calling someone. I think like there's a lot of different ways to go about that, but ultimately it's just about building rapport.
But unpacking the VVP, which I think is super important. So
Yeah.
VVP for the audience is a value validation project, which is where you sell the value or you validate the value you have to be able to do the project or the job itself, which is showing an employer, hey, I can kind of do this.
Yeah.
This is the proof that I can do this. So I remember working with you on was it a 5 or 6 page PDF that we did, or was
I think so. I remember like making some graphs and stuff and kind of demonstrating like the difference of like if you didn't have my approach versus if you did. And I remember getting an email back from when I sent it, and the guy was just super impressed by it. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that worked.
It works.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it came back, and then after that interview process, everything just kind of like worked a lot easier.
Yeah. And that's a really good story for people who don't network.
Yeah.
Okay, networking is one thing, it's just doing it, right?
Yeah.
But like knowing what to say to who and how to get their attention. And once you have their attention, to show them how you can do the job, that's your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that you felt that as well, because it's the person came back to you and said, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Let's have a meeting.
Yeah.
How did that meeting go?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Well, also because you prepped me for that interview really well.
Thank you.
You
I remember the testimonial. It was
Yeah.
probably one of the best testimonials we still have on the website.
Well, it's why people keep messaging me. Isn't it?
Ouch. Sorry. Your one's still good. Go on, you're the co-host now. Come on. That's the proof of the pudding.
But yeah, the interview went great. I was looking back through my emails last night prepping for this, and I remember because at the end he was like, "Damn, this was one of the most impressive interview processes, start to finish." And like we're really happy to have you on board. And I was just like, I remember the feeling of when I got that email, and I was like,
the euphoria you feel is like,
yeah,
yes,
it's like
I got a reply, man. That's the best feeling, man.
That dopamine hit must be amazing. Wow. Yeah. And dude, I mean, that is amazing. Still remember you made my day with giving me that news and seeing that you got into the role that you wanted to get into. And it was so interesting working with you, because we initially were looking for a financial analyst position, and then through the process of understanding via networking actually what you want to do. And I think a good takeaway for a job seeker today who's just super open about any job, they can actually find out what job they want to do, via networking.
Yeah.
Which I think you're super proof of.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
I think there's actually two important parts of that. Like, one is understanding the culture from the current employees, but two, it's kind of like the secret sauce, is that most companies hate hiring. Like, it's so expensive for them to hire. And because of that, they have a lot of like referral bonuses for people who like internally refer. Now, it wasn't the case in my case, but I know that a lot of people who are hired in my company now and previous companies, like they were hired by those internal referrals, and like networking is kind of a way to generate those like internal champions for you. People who they're going to champion you because they're going to get paid for it.
And good money as well.
Yeah.
Very good money.
Yeah.
And also that's proof that the hidden job market actually exists.
Yeah.
Which is like there are internal positions.
Exactly.
You speak to the right people. Those people then refer you. You get a position. And it could be as simple as sending the right message to the right person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's another case for like, when you're approaching a job is like multi-threading. Like it's super important to get to the hiring manager for sure. But it's also a great tactic to kind of engage with the team members that you'll be working with, because you'll get like good juice for the interview, right? Like you understand what culture you're walking into. You could get that referral, but also like it's one of those things where like when someone's hired from our company and they've kind of spoken to a couple of us from the interview process, the hiring manager talks about them. We can go, oh yeah, that guy talked to us. He reached out to us on LinkedIn. He spoke to us over email. Super impressive, right? Because he's already doing the job that you're looking to hire.
Especially when you're doing a sales, going for a sales position or an SDR position. But that's quite interesting. And I wanted to ask, like, so you said you had multiple offers while you were applying for jobs. And so can you talk to me a little bit more about that? Or if you don't want to, feel free to not name the companies, but what offers you got and in what was like the time frame you got them in.
Yeah, I won't name the companies, but I do remember there's a couple jobs. They're kind of all SDR positions, all kind of similar salaries. What was really important to me then was all this groundwork we'd already done on culture fits. Like me and Milo had done a lot of research into these companies, understanding like what culture I'm walking into, what's the growth like, what's the opportunity of the job. So coming into that scenario, I was already equipped with the kind of information I needed to make that decision, and ultimately it kind of just worked out that I chose Impact, and it was a great company to start my SDR career in.
Amazing. And having interviewed for the similar role in different companies, what was your key takeaway for someone who's watching and is trying to get into an SDR role? What do you think their priority should be, and something that they think they have is very important, but it actually isn't?
I think in terms of what's important to focus on in those interviews is like demonstrating that you can grind it out, one, because like the SDR job, it can be a grind, and you've got to show that you can always bounce back. Two is that you can show, like, you can tell a story, you can be curious, you can be like someone who communicates really well with any person, because that's ultimately what you got to do. You got to be a great communicator of your product, but also you've got to be that one phone call that they remember 6 months down the line, because it might have been that you called them and it was a bad time, but I've got people who I'm calling now from when I started this job who now it's the right time to sell to.
That's interesting.
So it's those kind of things is like super important to demonstrate that you can do them right.
Yep.
I think things that I thought were important that probably aren't as important. I will caveat this, but probably demonstrating technical expertise. So obviously, because I had a degree in finance, like going into fintech companies was a no-brainer. I went into a martech company first though, and I thought it would be such a hindrance that I didn't have any relevant experience in marketing tech, right? But actually, they were looking for soft skills, right? Every company is going to be different. Every product is going to be different. And obviously, these companies are going to train you to sell those products and train you to have industry knowledge. You've got to show that you're able to learn. But also, I don't think it's as important to demonstrate that you know this industry in and out. Like, it's a bonus for sure, but I don't think it was as important as I thought it was when I first started job hunting. And if you're joining a good company, they're gonna have like enough good resources to help you get there knowledge wise.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where like it's great to have, but it's not as important as soft skills.
Not as important as most people think, because I speak to a lot of job seekers and they say, Milo, I don't have the hard skills required, but they don't even know about the soft skills. So your point is that, hey, soft skills are actually more important than you think.
Yeah.
Companies use them as a metric to see if they build the experience. Because these companies you've joined with no experience, they build the experience required.
Yeah.
And they saw the soft skills you have, and they saw that as we would invest into this person because he has the baseline of what we look for. He's a communicator.
Yeah.
He has empathy. He has teamwork as a soft skill. You also have leadership as well. That can turn into delegating teams in the future. Obviously, we worked together 2 years ago, and now since then, you've gone into some very interesting roles as well.
Yeah.
And in the fintech space. So what do you think the future of, I guess, jobs are for you and with the market and how people look for jobs nowadays?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm kind of happy where I am, to be honest. I'll stay as long as they'll keep me. I think ultimately the natural progression is from going to an SDR to an account executive. So for people who don't know, an SDR is generally the person who works outbound. So we look for opportunities, kind of bring the initial interest in and qualify whether it's kind of worth our company's time and resources to kind of enter that conversation into our pipeline. The account executive is then the person who takes that pipeline and closes it into a sale. Really, the other part of the account executive's job, though, is also just being an SDR as well, which is why it's quite fundamental to have like SDRs that come into the account executive position. It's probably most AEs are former SDRs. So I think that's my kind of natural trajectory is to go towards an account executive position. But for now, I'm kind of really enjoying where I am.
Yeah.
Like the culture is great. People are really chill in my office.
Yeah.
There's no like I think with sales, like you have so much pressure on yourself to just perform as an SDR doing your job. So sometimes when there are like other external pressures like work politics and just life stuff, it can be a lot to kind of like carry all that. So it's super important to like be in a sales role where you can just like you can feel enabled in every other aspect of your life, that you can just be this like this sharp object towards your goal.
That's a good point. And I think a lot of people that don't know what they want to do end up going into an SDR role.
Yeah.
But it just takes them so long to realize what SDR is. And actually, that's a really good job for them to do.
Yeah.
Which is like, you can speak to people. You can be part of a very exciting company, work with some really great people, have a product that changes lives or is a great solution for a business, get paid really well doing it, and you grow as an individual. You just obviously have all these skills that you might not even realize you have, and you start developing them.
Yeah.
Like leadership potential, you run a team. You are a communicator, you can sell more products. So that's a really interesting part of being an SDR, I think, because I have sales experience from the past, and I kind of fell into sales by accident, and I realized, I wanted to be an architect. And then I realized I'm good at sales, and I wanted to be a salesperson and develop that. And where it's taken me now, I'm super happy. And I think SDR was the turning point for me, which is like, okay, this can turn into something great in the future.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And like I said, no one ever chooses to be a salesperson. It just
chooses
you, fall
right?
into it.
Yeah. That's
the one chooses the wizard, Harry.
Yeah. That's a good point. He's taken your reference from he used the mirror reference last time. Was it?
But that episode isn't out yet, actually.
Oh yeah, that's next week. Yeah. Or the week after.
Great minds.
Yeah,
100%.
But as you said, sales is such an important skill. And if you think in a broader scale, we're selling ourselves every single day.
Yeah.
And having that particular skill set of selling something, which is actually, as you said, it's a value propositioning and understanding the person's pain and how you position it. It's a skill that will never go unnoticed and will always have a value in the market.
Yeah.
Yep.
100% agree. And it's just being able to know that that's the area that you can kind of apply yourself to, which is interesting. If you had the advice to give to someone today to start looking for the right company, what would be the main thing? Would it be soft skills? Would it be culture? Would it be work style? Knowing what you know now, what would be the main factor? Because we've covered networking, we've covered getting the attention of someone, saying the right thing, but what's the main sort of subject theme, do you think, that's important in the modern job market?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things you'd kind of want to look for. Employee turnover is usually a good indicator of whether a sales company is kind of invested in keeping you in the long term. In those conversations you have as you network, it's really important to look at like how the team is actually doing, because outwardly a team might project that they're doing great and they're making this amount of sales and everyone's hitting target. It's not always that case, and you can usually learn that from people who are a bit like lower down in the process. I think at the end of the day, like you just got to approach the whole process with honesty, and like probably 9 times out of 10 you'll get honesty back. So it's one of those things where like if you can be transparent with the person you're hiring, like you can understand what the culture's like, are they hitting targets, what's the promotion cycle looking like, and for sure things might change. Like the market will always change, and I think that's kind of what I felt at my first job when I joined. It was like a really fast growing company, a lot of opportunity, but ultimately there was just kind of a market downturn in that space, which kind of restricted me from like growing up to the next part of my career that I needed. And I think ultimately like the reason I moved from that company was that like I feel like you should always feel like you're growing, and when I got kind of like 18 months in there, it felt like I had kind of stalled in a way. So I just needed a new environment, and I thought, what better way than to just join a startup where everything is chaos.
Yeah.
Organized chaos. I love, my tenure in a startup was for 6 months, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think it prepared me for, anything can come at any time, and you have to be prepared for it. I mean, for 1 week, my CEO was off in the Tenerife on a holiday, and a client campaign went berserk. And the CTO was sick, so he was working from home. And I ended up taking a call with the client, who I've never met, I was like, and I explained what went wrong, what we're trying to do to fix it, how we are making up for it, and how we make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future.
Yeah.
And I think I think I was pulling out my hair before that call, but at the end of that week, when I realized, and with that just one call and me preparing for it and me understanding the customer and understanding our mistake also, I just learned so much more. And you don't have that in a big organization, because someone else will be covering someone else, and that's a different loop. But you won't be taking calls for the CEO in a big organization. And I was fortunate enough to, go through that opportunity within my 6 months, and that just prepares you for the worst in the best way.
Yeah. Every day is a learning day, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also, like, to reverse engineer that, if you don't have experience right now and you wanted to build that experience, a startup's a great place to be, because you have that organized chaos, which is like, okay, I might end up dealing with a client who's a CEO because the CEO of this company is in Tenerife, and I'm going to have to take the reins, which is super, super interesting. If you had to give advice to someone right now who is considering dealing with like a career consultant or a career coach or a service to help them get a job, what would you initially say? Because a lot of people are kind of dubious. They see like a lot of gurus online saying, hey, say this, say that, and you get a magical job and an offer in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Considering that and putting that to one side, what's your honest opinion about, obviously, you being on service, using, obviously, our platform, honest opinion?
Yeah, honestly, I think what saved you was your Google reviews.
Yeah.
Like you just got to have some way external to the coach to verify that the coach is actually good. And I remember looking through your Google reviews because I was super skeptical of you.
Yeah.
Like going into it, I'll be honest.
I hear
with
that
you.
all the time, by the way. It's like I give people advice, and they're
this
like,
is
"Oh,
too good to be true.
Too good
Yeah,
to be true. It doesn't work."
it's like, oh wow, is that the exact answer to the problem that I have in this exact moment? That is too good to be true. So I was super skeptical, but then I started doing a lot of research into kind of like your reviews external to the stuff you can control. And yeah, it just like it kind of verified to me that it would be good advice to kind of pursue. And I've noticed that a lot of people who are looking towards you now actually do message me because I was a testimonial kind of external to you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all right. I actually I've just got a copy and paste message that I send them now. But you know I can always vouch for you, and the fact that you have so many people vouching for you kind of indicates that at least it's worth a conversation. Yeah, I think in anything you buy, right, it's just super important to verify from a third party that that person is actually good, because there will be a lot of salespeople or like people on LinkedIn who are saying they can do X amount of things, but then it turns out that they're actually so. In sales, we have it where it's salespeople who sell to salespeople. Like, I don't believe in them.
Yeah.
Just because I'm so skeptical. Like, all of their experience is built on people who are like happy to kind of entertain it because of like good karma in the universe. I always call it good juju. Yeah. But actually, like, I don't trust salespeople who sell to salespeople. I almost will never trust their advice.
Yeah.
Or if I do, I will be immensely skeptical of what
100%.
Yeah.
It's like the anti-salesperson, which is like selling to salespeople. And salespeople should be able to sell to the clients, but they need a salesperson to show them how to sell.
Yeah.
I get that 100%.
That just went way over my head, man.
It kind of went way over mine as well.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you're getting at,
it's like if you ask a footballer, how can I score this goal? And their entire life, they've been kicking into a goal that has no goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a way well put analogy.
Yeah.
I like your version better. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
And then you're like, yeah, but like, what if there is a goalkeeper in the way? How do I deal with them? That's
a good point. And I like your point about actually verifying people who can do what they say they can do.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, excuse my French, crap online. And people say, just do this. It's simple. Like, you get a magic job in 4 weeks.
And not even crap, but proper scams. People are running and I mean, I think there's no place else. Like, these people are taking money from people who are trying to look for jobs and scamming them. There's no worse way to do it. I mean,
it's awful.
And it's and that's what brings the uncertainty in this environment, and what makes actual good products questionable when people actually try to explain to you, oh no, this process works, it's trusted by thousands of people. You can actually, and some people say, oh, those can be actors, how do we know? So it creates that animosity that not only does not help the people who actually are looking for jobs or looking for any sort of product, but keeps them away from actually going for something that can be valuable to them.
And I do think that's part of the reason I'll always vouch for you if someone comes in, because I would much rather they direct themselves to someone who I can verify is good for them.
And I really appreciate it, by the way. Especially like you being skeptical at the start.
Yeah.
And I remember you were a little bit, and that's completely fine. You should be, especially buying something online from someone saying, hey, I can fix your problem. Trust me.
Yeah.
I get it fully. And if anything, I respect that a lot more than someone who just blindly buys. But I think the main takeaway is you can use a career coach. You also don't need one. Because if you can communicate your value and you know the company you want to work for, and you can really figure out, okay, there are all these different things that I'm not even thinking about right now to get into the company I want to be in. It's a lot simpler than you think. And if you kind of reverse engineer all the stuff you've done, you realize, oh, I was just myself, and I was just kind of let to be myself in front of the companies that I should be working for in a way. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I think the reason you'd go for a career coach is just to accelerate that learning.
Yeah.
Because like I think even without you, like I would have eventually come to those conclusions. It just would have taken me a lot more time.
6 months, 12 months.
And then those 6-12 months, like if I'm thinking like just logically, that is salary that I'm missing out on.
Yeah, if you're on like, let's say 3K a month times about 12, 36K. Wow, I saved you 36K.
And that's not only, that's just the money aspect of it. Some people like myself are on visa. So we have a ticking time bomb of either if you don't get this job in this time window, you're out.
Yeah, that's
so all
scary.
the money that you spend being here, trying to, in these universities and the accommodations, all the, all the trouble that you went on. If you don't find with a job that sponsors you or isn't that salary level, thank you, bye-bye.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's crazy.
Point. Yeah. So, to wrap things up, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who's looking for the job that you want to do, or that you're in, actually, I should say. We've obviously covered quite a few different things, but there's one thing. Someone can pause the video right now. Obviously, like and subscribe before you pause the video, please. But if they had to do one thing by pausing the video and they had like 5 seconds to do it, what would that be?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Like just call the person if you have their number. Just like ring the gatekeeper, like the office line, and like get to the person. Just get in front of them. Like it doesn't matter how you do it. Just get in front of them and get like them to like you. All the other stuff is like peripheral, but ultimately, like if you can't get in front of the person, if you can't build that rapport, then like how are you gonna get the job? There's almost no way to do it other than like tossing a CV into a pool of 2,000 and hoping that someone reads it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like all Sheila Buff on you, but just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. So pause this video. Just do it. And I think with that we can wrap things up. Ashish, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
Joining us today, and it's been a real blast working with you, and I'm so glad that after 2 years you've come back and you're on the podcast. And we initially were planning on doing this quite a while back as well.
I feel like you invited me to podcast like a year ago.
Yeah. And we started recently doing it, so it's like
2 months ago
of you.
or something.
Yeah, literally. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And see you guys on next week.
Next week. See you then.